Hello, welcome. This is Augustine Emeka from tclassified.com and jamwayeknekouni.com. Today we're going to be looking at JavaScript. JavaScript is one of the fundamental languages that you need to know about if you are stepping into programming. It's actually a programming language, unlike HTML that is a markup language and CSS that is for styling. JavaScript is a scripting language that you can also use as a programming language, and it has power to do many things to your website. So we're going to be starting an introductory class into JavaScript. So first of all, we're going to be looking at what is JavaScript. JavaScript is a programming language that is used to make web pages interactive and dynamic. If you want to be seeing something like flashing of pictures on your website, you want it to be moving, you want your website to be able to show dates and do a whole lot of things, to be able to get updated automatically, then you can use this language JavaScript for that. You can use other languages like Python, PHP for all these, but JavaScript is very useful, and you can find out in Stack Overflow that many people are using JavaScript now. So it's a very important language to learn, in the sense that if you're working on front end, back end, and on connection with your database, you can use one single language to do all this, and that is JavaScript. So JavaScript is a programming language that is used to make web page interactive. It is an interpreted language, unlike other programming languages like Java and C++ that are compiled. JavaScript is not compiled, it's actually an interpreted language. JavaScript runs on the client's computer or the browser. That means you can use it to manipulate what you see on your web browsers, like when you get to your Google Chrome and your Mozilla Firefox. It is object based. That means it sees it can be written from the object oriented programming perspective, looking at every software as having functions and attributes. Now, some people normally say, is JavaScript the same thing as Java? Or what is the difference between JavaScript and Java? And we found out that they have similar name, but they are completely different. So JavaScript is not Java. Java is much more complex. Java has a steeper is a little bit more difficult than JavaScript, and it can do powerful things because it can be used to do desktop applications. Java is in the same category as C programming or C++ programming, whereas JavaScript is a scripting language. Now, what can you do with JavaScript? You can use JavaScript to put content in an HTML page on the fly. That means you can use it to easily put content on the HTML page, which are one of the things that we'll be experimenting on when we start this lecture fully. You can use it to make web page responsive. You can use it to create forms so that you can make your web page to be responsive. You can use styling and a whole lot of things in connection with your JavaScript to make your web page to be very responsive. You can use it to dictate a user's browser and other info like date, time, location, and many other things. You can use it to create cookies. Cookies are some sort of program that you can use to collect clients' information when they are using their web browser. You can use JavaScript to validate forms. You can use JavaScript to create animations. You can see movements on websites and things like that. You can use it to create games as well. You can use it to do slideshows and scrollers. You can use JavaScript to build apps with frameworks like AngularJS, React, and Backbone, which we are going to be learning in detail in subsequent classes. Now, how do you compare HTML to JavaScript? They are completely different and they work together. HTML is a markup language and JavaScript is a programming as well as a scripting language. JavaScript uses events and actions to make your page interactive, and you have to learn HTML first before you start getting to JavaScript. Now, what are the fundamental things that we're going to be learning as we are starting our JavaScript? We're going to be learning about variables. We're going to be learning about arrays. Variables are actually uh, the things that we are going to be using to store values. We have arrays, collection of data. We have loops. We have conditionals. Loops is when we have things like for loop, while loop, and the rest. Conditionals when we have things like if else statements, comparison and operators in mathematics and other logical operators, objects. We're going to be looking at object-oriented programming, looking at JavaScript from that very perspective of abstraction, polymorphism, and the rest of them. Program flow, data types, prototypes, events. So those are the things we are going to be looking at. Now, what do I need to run? What do you need to have in your computer for you to run JavaScript? Number one, you need Google Chrome. Like me, that's what we're going to be using. That's the web browser that we're going to be using to run JavaScript. You also need Mozilla Firefox if that's what you have. If you have Safari, if you have Internet Explorer, any of these browsers. I'll bet you that Google Chrome is the best from my little experience on this. Now, for you to write the JavaScript code that you can then run on any of the browsers mentioned above, you need a text editor like Notepad, Sublime Text, or Visual Studio Code. In these our in the examples that we'll be giving, we are going to be using Notepad and Visual Studio Code, but you can also use Sublime Text if you want. So we are going to start coding. So we are going to be choosing the editor that we are going to be choosing in our own will be Visual Studio Code and Notepad. Please, if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. If you have any question relating this and any other thing that we've been given on this site, please put it on this comment section so that I can easily see it and answer you. Please check out our website at www.jamboyeknekouni.com. You'll be seeing a lot of news concerning school there and every other news that you want to hear about the country and the world. Thanks for your subscriptions and support. Thank you, and God bless you.
JavaScript is that programming language of HTML and the web. So it is the programming language that you can use to make the HTML and CSS that we've been looking at. You want to make it to be more powerful, more interactive. You want to make it look good. You want to produce animations. You want to produce things that will fascinate people. You use the language JavaScript. So that's what we're going to be learning. A good example of what JavaScript can do is here. You can see here, what can JavaScript do? When you click this button, you see this click me button. This text here is going to change. So when I click on it now, bam, you will see that it has changed. So that is what happens. So this is the actual text there, JavaScript and change HTML content. When I click here, bagam, you see it has changed to hello world. So that's what happens. If you refresh again, it will happen again. JavaScript can change HTML content. You click here, click me, you see that this text will change. Bam, it has changed. So that is what JavaScript can do. HTML cannot do this, but JavaScript can do it, and that is why we are learning JavaScript. It's very powerful. You can use it to do a whole lot of things. You can use it to post information from a form to a database. It can interact with database. It can tell you real time what time is all about. You can use it to develop chat applications, big heavy applications that we have in this world. They run on languages like JavaScript, PHP, Python. But JavaScript is very good because you can use it for both the back end and the front end. You can use JavaScript runtime known as Node.js for your back end to connect to database, and you can use the JavaScript framework or library known as React.js for front end. You can also use Angular. But in this Dev-C training, we are going to be looking at Node.js and React.js. So let's look at JavaScript in details. Like I made this little note. I got most of them from W3 School and other web resources. JavaScript is the programming language of HTML and the web. Now, how can you make JavaScript to come out? How do you echo it and make it come out? You can use these four methods. Either you use inner HTML, document.write, window.alert, or console.log. When we're going to be using our VS Code, you're going to see a lot of this console.log. In this my training, I'm going to be showing you more on inner HTML and document.write. So take note. Now, if you want to write a JavaScript code, this is an example of a JavaScript code. You can see the equal to sign. that you use here, very important. This is showing that this is a variable and this is the value. So this value is a string because it's inside quotes. So you must enclose every JavaScript code that you're writing inside the script tag. This is the script tag. So if it is internal JavaScript file, it has to be like this. But if you're using external JavaScript file, you're linking it to another HTML page, then you have to use this code to import it or to bring it in. Script, then CRC simply means SRC simply means the source of the JavaScript. Put the name, then you enclose it with this. So this is how you import. You bring it into another file as an external script, but this is how you put it into your file. We're going to experiment this so that we'll see how it works. So you can see this, what can JavaScript do? This is an example of a code. You can copy out this code, this very code here, put it in Notepad. When you run it, you will have this. So let's study this code. This is doc type HTML. This is telling us that this is actually HTML file. But inside this HTML file, we are now having a JavaScript code. So this is the JavaScript code that we are having inside the HTML file. So you can see this line of code, button type button. This is actually what is making this JavaScript to behave in the way that it's behaving when you click. So anytime you click, it's gonna do what you want it to do because of this JavaScript code. So you can see this JavaScript code is not actually enclosed in these script tags, but that doesn't mean it's gonna, because of the advanced browsers that we are having now and the advancement of the code, you can actually not put the script and it still gets it to work. So this very code here that I just highlighted, if you put it inside a notepad and save it with anything you want .html, and you run it just like the way we've been doing the HTML codes, it's gonna run and you'll be able to see this. So when you click on this, you will now have it behave the way you want. So we're gonna try this by copying this very one. So all the resources I'm using, I'm going to paste them on my on the website so that you can get all of them. I'm going to put a link. So we are still looking at what JavaScript can do. We have not actually started using JavaScript per se. So we are looking at what it can do. So I'm going to say Control N for a new file, Control V to paste this. So this is a HTML document that has JavaScript. So we can run this and get it to work and do something. So we're going to be starting immediately. So I'm going to first of all explain this very code that ran to give this. So I'm going to copy it out just the way we used it. So I'm going to say Control N for a new this, and I'm going to paste it. So this code gave birth to this. So I want to explain this one by one so that we can understand. Doc type HTML, like I told you, HTML5, that's how you start it with this HTML opening tag and closing tag, body opening, body closing. So this is basically HTML. H2, that's heading 2 elements. That is what we have here. But now starting from here, this is the paragraph element and this is the paragraph element that we have here. Then this last one is the button, and this is the button we have here. Now this button is having an on-click event, so that whenever you click it, what do you want it to do? It will do this it will perform this JavaScript instruction. So I want to explain this one by one so that we can get it. Now we use JavaScript to work on your HTML to make it to look better. So this is already HTML document. So we're introducing this JavaScript here in order to make this perform the way it wouldn't do normally. So how does it do this? Now if you whenever you want to put an element that you can easily change or work on, it's good you use the paragraph tag. So that is why we use paragraph to do this. But for you to manipulate any HTML element, you have to give it an ID, because it is with this ID that the JavaScript will see it and work on it. So you can see the ID here is demo. So when the JavaScript is working on it, it took note of this demo, and that's how it was able to work on it and get you the result. So the next HTML element here is the button, but this button is going to be performing this very function using JavaScript. So I want to explain this function so that you understand it. So what is actually telling you is that you have a paragraph element with the content. JavaScript can change HTML content. So that is this paragraph with the content. hello JavaScript. Okay, let me refresh this so that it will be what it used to be. JavaScript can change HTML content. So that's what we have. Now you have now a button, and this button is having the content of click me. So the same way you have this button, the content is here, click me. But this button, since you want it to perform a function, you now give it the onClick event. So you're telling it that whenever this button is clicked, what do you want it to do? It's going to document or get element by ID. It's going to look at this very document. So when it looks at this very document, it's going to get an element that has the ID of demo. So which element has the ID of demo? Is this paragraph. It has the ID of demo. So when it gets this element that has the ID of demo, that is going to give it an inner HTML that is going to change this very content that is hard. This content that is JavaScript can change HTML. Change it to what? Equal to hello JavaScript. So whenever you click this button, that is to fetch this element that has the ID of demo, which is this paragraph, check the inner HTML, which is the content, and give it the value of hello JavaScript. Instead of this content that it's having, it should now have this. So that is in summary what it's doing. So that's why when you now click this button type button on click, that whenever you click this, that it should do what? Document.get element by ID, that you should check this document, check it, and get the very element, which is paragraph, that has the ID of demo. You see, it's the paragraph that has the ID of demo. That it should now check the inner HTML, which is the content, and change it to hello JavaScript. And that's why when we click on this bagam, it will change it to hello JavaScript. So this is a typical example of what JavaScript can do. In subsequent classes, we are going to be looking at variables, arrays, and everything in JavaScript, which I've already prepared for you in form of a note that will make it easier for us to understand. So if you check this this whole folder, I've already uploaded it, and I've shared the link both on the messenger so that you can easily get it. So if you open this very notepad, you're going to see something that looks like a note where I have everything that I've been teaching all this while. So if you scroll down, you're going to get to JavaScript. This is JavaScript. This is what I just said now, that JavaScript is the programming language of HTML and web, and this is the ways you can see show JavaScript. We are using inner HTML. We just used inner HTML in the last instance that I gave us. These are ways you can use to bring out JavaScript, and this is the first code that I just explained now. So in subsequent classes, we are going to be looking at more detailed things. We are going to be looking at variables and many other things that will help you to understand this very well. So I'm using resources like I told you from W3 School and from other web sources, which I'll be giving us reference to so that we can easily go to and learn more. So that is where we're going to be stopping for now. We'll continue. Please ask your questions so that I can pick them up, and tell me also the ways that you think that we can make this learning better. Thank you.